English translation, 282nd contact. Thursday, 13th of April, 2000, 23:10 hours.
Ah, greetings. It is a great pleasure to see you all here together. It is a bit crowded here now.
We just wanted to greet you and then leave again. We feel like moving around in the center area for about half an hour. The joy is all mine to welcome you.
I agree with him. Greetings.
Of course, this is also in my sense. My dear greetings to it.
For my part, I can only agree with that. I greet you.
I also want to offer you my greetings.
I'm happy to see you well. I also send you my greetings.
Thank you all.
You sent me an order that you wished to speak to me on an urgent matter.
Yes, I asked Florina to inform you. But I also have one or two questions for Zafenat Paniach.
Then you should start with him, because he also wants to get some movement on the center's grounds.
Of course. Can I ask my questions right away?
Of course. But surely Njana, Toron, Samjang, and Florina want to say goodbye right away?
That is what we want. Can we leave your workroom through the outside door?
Sure, nothing stands in the way of that. Wait, I will just check if the coast is clear. It is all okay. So, come after me. Then goodbye, Samjang, Florina, Tauron, and Njana.
Goodbye and good time.
Goodbye. I also wish you all the best.
Maybe we will see each other again soon. Goodbye. Stay well.
I was very happy to greet you. Goodbye.
Now then, Zafenat Paniach, if I may ask you my questions.
I am listening.
The last time you were here, I got a warning from you that we should not make any money payments via the internet. Is it still the case that we should not do this?
My recommendation in this regard is still valid. I would even like to say that under no circumstances should you make any payments via so-called internet banking, nor should you allow any payments addressed to you in this form. The entire internet banking system is, at least at present, and also still for longer coming times, extremely uncertain. The security factors of internet banking are still extremely fragile and, in general, absolutely inadequate in relation to the illegal activities of criminals who are out to enrich themselves illegally and criminally via the good faith of internet banking users, who always run the risk of losing all their assets or at least large sums of money. It is in fact in no wise advisable to use the internet banking system. The security systems are extremely inadequate.
I also explained this at the last General Assembly. Then my other question. If we now have an internal server, is it possible that it can be penetrated from the outside and the stored material, etc., can be changed if someone is connected to it, which is also connected to the internet?
This is indeed the case. So I cannot give a recommendation in any wise regarding the coupling of the server and the internet. An internal server is only safe from internet influences and unfair external machinations if there is no direct or indirect connection between the server and the internet. At least there should be a disconnection station that protects the server and completely disconnects the internet connection, which guarantees an absolute separation of the two factors if they affect each other.
So, as Stefan says, there would have to be a lock operation, so to speak, which guarantees a complete separation of server and internet.
That is the point, yes.
Good. Thank you very much. That was my last question to you.
Then I want to say goodbye now and ask you to escort me out.
Of course. Please follow me. I will go ahead and explore the area so you do not run into anyone unexpectedly, all right? You can go without worrying. Go in this direction to the swing. because the others have also gone there. Somewhere you will probably find them back there, or on the hiking trail. Goodbye, and let me see you again sometime. It is always a pleasure for me.
It shall be so. Goodbye.
Well, here I am again, my friend. Please make yourself comfortable on the sofa. You have now really stood long enough, I think.
I felt the need to stand for a bit. But now I like to sit down. Thank you.
Here, if you please, I would like you to read this article I have written on procreation, pregnancy, and birth. The subject arose for me as a result of an insufficient and poorly informed 8-minute television program, according to which I had the idea that this subject should be dealt with in more detail. Of course, I took as my starting point the knowledge that is known here on the earth, at least among those human beings who deal with it or are interested in it. But since many human beings often do not even have the basic knowledge about procreation, pregnancy, and birth, and thus do not know the most elementary facts, I thought I should say something about this. Although I am not a doctor who deals with these things in depth, is schooled, and has the corresponding knowledge, I find that also with simple explanations and words from my point of view and from my understanding, useful information and presentation of some important facts can result in something useful and understandable. I would now like to know your opinion on my article, which I would like to publish in the WZ, and from which I would also like to produce a brochure.
Then let me see what thoughts moved you and what result arose from them.
Here you go.
Procreation, pregnancy, and birth.
Every day, tens of thousands of babies are born all over the world. Reproduction seems so normal to humans that hardly any woman or man thinks about it more deeply. The average person hardly knows what actually happens during procreation, pregnancy, and birth. Usually it is only known that a pregnancy lasts 9 months, but that in 280 days a new human being on the earth develops from 2 different human cells. This already eludes the knowledge of most people who are not directly concerned with this topic. Also, the other tricks are mostly unknown, for example, how procreation takes place and what happens during pregnancy. As already mentioned, most reasonably educated people are aware that after conception, a 9-month pregnancy takes place before the new human child is born. But the whole process remains a mystery to most women and men, or simply something incomprehensible about which they do not bother to think. On the way from conception to pregnancy to birth, however, there are many obstacles and difficulties that are well worth thinking about. In fact, it is a miracle that despite the many obstacles and circumstances, procreation, pregnancy, and childbirth are possible. A human child, coming into being, sleeps in its mother's womb, using the placenta as the lying surface for the head and body. If one looks at this new life in the womb, then one can speak of a true miracle of seeing how the new and still so little person lives. But it is also like a miracle that one can really understand as a human being how the new life came into being, thrives, and gives birth. Starting from the woman, it must be understood that in the course of a month between 2 menstrual periods, she is fertile or fertile only once for 6 hours. After ovulation, a selected ovum passes through the fallopian tube, but in every 3rd cycle the conditions are ideal enough for fertilization to take place. This means that the woman is not always fertile, but only temporarily, or periodically fertile, or even fertilizable. In contrast, a healthy man is always fertile. If he ejaculates during sexual intercourse with a partner and thus emits semen, about 300 million sperm are ejaculated and immediately start a race to the uterus. The woman's cervix contracts to suck in the sperm. This happens even hours after sexual intercourse or after the man's ejaculation, whereby the remaining penetrated sperm are also sucked in. Despite this process, however, most sperm do not reach their destination because they die beforehand. Some of the sperm, however, are extremely resistant, persistent, and tough, and live much longer than their companions, with a lifespan of up to 6 days. When a sperm cell is able to penetrate into the migrating egg, which is still in the fallopian tube on its way to the uterus and has been detached from the woman's ovary, then all its other fellow sperm have no chance of being involved in a fertilization act. The moment a sperm enters the egg and fertilizes it, the stability of the egg membrane changes. Now it becomes stable, impermeable, and impenetrable to other sperm cells. This is regulated by the law of nature, which stipulates that a trigger is used to ensure that only two hereditary masses that are fundamentally different meet and unite. This alone ensures that a healthy division of the ovum is possible. However, before a final fusion of egg and sperm can take place, 100 biochemical reactions must first take place. However, it is precisely this process that is not handled by every egg cell, because in fact this procedure can only be handled by every third egg. If there is even a very slight deviation in any respect, then the process cannot be carried out, because nature breaks off the process and makes it null and void. As a person who thinks about things, one is always amazed by the miracle of fertilization, pregnancy, and birth. In procreation, it is not enough that the egg cell and the seed come together, because truthfully, there are a multitude of factors that must run off like a waterfall one after the other. This can lead to a multitude of disturbances which can have various causes. For example, it can be that the fallopian tube is not continuous enough, or it can be that there is a maldevelopment or underdevelopment of the oocyte, or that no ovulation occurs at all, etc. So there is a great variety of disorders that can occur in this relationship, which ultimately prevents fertilization from taking place. If, however, the union or fusion of egg and seed is successful, then it takes about 30 hours, during which the necessary natural processes take place in the egg cell, according to which the germ then divides into two exactly identical cells. This germ of the new life is tiny and no larger than 1/10 of a millimeter. Compared to something materially visible, it is no larger than the tiny size of a dust particle. But already in this tiny thing the sex of the new human child is fixed. Also, it is already determined whether a left or right-handedness will be given. The color of eyes and hair, among many other things, has already been determined. At this time, the germ is still in the fallopian tube. Before it reaches the uterus, it has another hike ahead of it, which lasts about 5 days. During this migration period, the cell bundle grows several times its original size, and when it reaches the uterus, it is about the size of a pinhead. The time has come for it to implant itself in the uterus. But once again, an obstacle appears, in this case the woman's immune system. In this case, it is important that the immune system is restricted or switched off by certain substances. Nothing has been determined yet. It is not yet certain whether a pregnancy will actually occur or not. Everything or nothing is still the principle. If there are actually no ideal conditions, then the cells do not find a hold, because they are mercilessly rejected. However, if the conditions are right for the fertilized egg to cling to the egg, and the fertilized egg can implant itself, then it triggers a strong hormone boost, which signals that pregnancy has now effectively begun and normally takes its 280-day course. In the second week of pregnancy, the embryo connects to the maternal blood circulation. This is the moment when the toxins absorbed by the mother enter the embryo, such as the approximately 6,000 different poisons from smoking if the mother has become addicted to smoking during pregnancy, or alcohol if it is consumed during pregnancy. Alcohol, in particular, is a drug not for getting smoke, drug and medication poisons, etc. That has enormous consequences for the embryo and later the fetus and can cause alcohol embryopathy. Once the alcohol enters the bloodstream of the pregnant woman due to its solubility in fat and water, it is absorbed and distributed throughout the body within a few seconds, just as the toxins from smoking, drugs, etc. are absorbed. The blood-brain barrier, consisting of fatty substances, is easily crossed by alcohol and various drugs and smoke poisons, etc. Although it is supposed to hold back toxins like a filter and actually protect the brain from their penetration. However, since alcohol, along with other substances and toxins, is able to enter the brain unhindered, it can fully develop its damaging effect. Alcohol also passes through the placenta in the same manner, which can lead to alcohol embryopathy in the embryo and/or fetus when the pregnant woman consumes alcohol. If a woman is pregnant and drinks beer, liqueur, drinking alcohol or wine and schnapps, etc., then the child in the womb becomes an indirect co-drinker because the alcohol, as well as other substances and toxins, reaches him or her unhindered via the placenta. The liver of the embryo is not able to cope with the poison because the degrading enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase ADH is not yet available to it, as is the case with adult humans who are sobered by it after a few hours of intoxication. The alcohol consumed by the mother also turns the child in the womb into an alcohol co-drinker and, if the mother is slightly tipsy, into a full drinker. The alcohol dehydrogenase only reaches the equivalent metabolic capacity of an adult in the course of the child's 5th year of life. This makes it clear why embryos, fetuses, and toddlers cannot digest alcohol and why it leads to severe deformities and other health damage in this regard. Detailed information can be found on pages 106 to 123 of the book Kinder mit besonderen Bedürfnissen by Kurt Kallenbach, Edition Marhold, ISBN 3-2-89166-208-24, paperback. In the Tagesanzeiger of 11.2, the following article was read concerning the same topic.
How alcohol damages fetuses.
Doctors have long warned expectant mothers of alcohol abuse because the drug can cause severe malformations in newborns. But it was only now that researchers from Humboldt University in Berlin found the explanation for the destructive effect in the early childhood brain in animal experiments. During sensitive developmental phases, alcohol drives masses of nerve cells into suicide. Science. Volume 287, p. 1056. Alcohol is considered to be the substance that most frequently leads to malformations. Up to 3 out of every 1,000 newborns suffer from fetal alcohol syndrome. Mothers are usually addicted. In mild cases, the children cannot concentrate well. At worst, they are mentally and physically retarded, tend to psychosis, and suffer from organ and facial deformities. Chrysanthi Ikonomidou and colleagues found in their experiments with newborn rats that the drug inhibits the activity of nerves in 2 ways. It blocks NMDA receptors, which absorb excitatory information for the cells. And it activates the GABA receptors, which reduce nerve activity. If the cells are inhibited during a critical development phase, they commit suicide. This only makes biological sense for those cells that do not assume any function in the maturing nervous system. Normally, this is about 1% in the rat brain. Under the influence of alcohol, however, 5 to 30% sacrifice themselves. However, the animals must be exposed to a blood alcohol level of 2 per 1,000 for at least 4 hours. If a pregnant woman consumes alcoholic beverages continuously, she can reach similar alcohol levels, warn the researchers. SPO! Today, medical research and findings have shown that a large number of factors are recorded or programmed in genes, such as whether a person will suffer a heart attack at a later date or whether they will develop another disease. Although this is not the latest trend for a long time to come, and therefore everything must be researched better and more clearly in the future, it is clear that the behavior of the mother herself is responsible for many such factors. If, in such a manner, a correspondingly unhealthy lifestyle and way of life takes place from her side, not only in the purely material area, but also consciously and psychologically, then it is indisputable that this also has a decisive, indirect influence on the becoming child in the mother's womb. Especially during the first weeks of pregnancy, the embryo develops with great speed. The cells divide faster and faster, and the organs are created at high speed. When the 4th week of pregnancy is reached, the growing embryo is already 2 millimeters in size. It is still tiny, but in another 8 months it will be large enough to be born as a child. Hard to grasp, but stark reality. After only 3 weeks, the embryo is ready to leave its purely instinctive development behind and to be enlivened by the creational spirit form, by that tiny part of the creational spirit that makes the human being conscious of himself or herself and to strive for higher things by consciously developing themselves after birth and for the attainment of understanding and reason. With the entry and enlivenment of the embryo, via the spirit form comes the moment when the heart of the developing human child becomes active in the womb and begins to work and beat, which from then on positively affects everything already developed. As the embryo continues to grow, it continuously alerts the mother's immune system. The mother's body analyses the child growing up in her body as a foreign body. However, the embryo counteracts this with a trick and outwits the mother's immune system. The counter-reaction of the growing child is that it produces substances that prevent a rejection reaction. This alone offers the possibility and guarantee that the child can remain in the womb, grow and develop. In fact, it is amazing how fast its cells work and how perfectly organized they are. But the question is, where do the individual cells get their knowledge from? What are they supposed to develop and become? The truth is that this knowledge is already stored in the genetic code, which in turn is anchored in the chromosomes. Accordingly, in the course of time, the corresponding organs develop from the respective cells. This fact, which the human being cannot yet grasp, explain and understand in its full scope, seems like a miracle to them, because in their still limited understanding, they could or should normally assume that a cell is misdirected, and that consequently a completely different organ could develop from it. But this is not the case because the miracle of nature is perfect and works with complete precision. A woman can become pregnant within the cycle of the moon phases, and therefore only every 28 days. This 28-day period is called the moon month or lunar month. The duration of the pregnancy can be calculated by this timing. If the calculation is made in lunar months, that is to say 28 days per month, then the pregnancy does not last 9 months, but 10 months. The unborn child still developing in the womb makes enormous progress every week. If the growing baby is then 8 weeks old, then it already has a size of 4 centimeters, whereby it already has all organ systems. However, this has nothing to do with the fact that these would already function to their full extent, because truthfully this is not yet the case, because the child must first get to know and test the organ functions and experience and live through how they really work and perform their functions. When the embryo is 10 weeks old, it is almost fully developed, from head to toe. From this moment on, the name of the embryo changes in the understanding of the human being and is henceforth called fetus. The child's head is now conspicuously large because initially it grows fastest. The reason for this is that the brain has to control the movements, the first learning processes as well as the growth and the perception in the further course of the development. This is also the time when the fetus begins to train its digestive system. At this point, it swallows amniotic fluid, about 1 liter a day. The swallowing movements can be clearly seen when a 3D ultrasound device is used for observation. The fetus later urinates the absorbed fluid back into the amniotic sac. A fact that is hardly imaginable for humans, namely that they can urinate out a liquid and then drink it again. The reality with the baby in the womb, however, is that the urinated fluid is reprocessed, as is practiced in a similar and technical form by astronauts. So there is a natural reprocessing plant in the amniotic sac. This means that there is a clean circulation, which guarantees a clean drinking liquid, which the growing child absorbs through the umbilical cord along with the necessary oxygen, etc. The baby is then able to drink the liquid he or she needs. However, the umbilical cord also serves to ensure that these toxins can be excreted again. However, the amniotic fluid is not connected to this circulation. The child in the womb can also hiccup, which the mother feels as a twitch in the stomach. It is also a fact that some pregnant women develop strange appetites with regard to food, and that their eating habits are also peculiar. One of the best-known examples of this is the consumption of sour cucumbers, which are refined with sweets, such as sweetened whipped cream, etc. The other example is a cucumber. However, there are also other pregnant women who are extremely sensitive to odors and tastes, and who therefore only consume well-chosen and odor and taste-adjusted foods. In principle, this fact is a behavior of pregnant women, which has not yet been fully researched by medical researchers and cannot therefore be explained in detail. The decisive factor, however, is the altered metabolic state, which is responsible for the increased sense of smell and taste. Nevertheless, it is not clear why some pregnant women like to mix, for example, pickled cucumbers or such with sweets, while others have an aversion against certain foods, for example, fish, meat, or pastries, etc. The true reason for this is not yet known with certainty. In contrast to the not yet fully clarified eating habits of pregnant women, other things of importance can be explained, such as the fact that the growth of the child in the womb can be checked with an ultrasound device without endangering its growth and detected if such a device is not used too often. This technique also makes it possible, for example, to detect twins or triplets, etc. at an early stage, as well as certain physical deformities and damage, which can lead to possible prenatal medical measures and interventions or, under certain circumstances, a necessary abortion or termination can be carried out, perhaps also for the mother's well-being and life. From the 4th month of pregnancy onwards, the fetus feels pain, and ultrasound shows a yawning or frowning in the growing child. And for quite some time it has even been possible to calculate a 3D image of the child, whereby the parents already receive a picture of their offspring before it is born. If they are lucky, they can use this technique to observe how their expectant child puts a thumb in their mouth and sucks on it. If the child touches the lips with one hand or the other, a sucking reflex is automatically triggered. This is also the time when the basic character begins to form. In the 6th month of pregnancy, a fluff forms on the entire body of the growing new human child, the actual function of which scientists have not yet been able to explain. However, this whole body fluff only lingers for a short time because it soon disappears again, except for the eyebrows and hairs of the head, which continue to exist. When about half of the pregnancy has passed, the mother feels her baby's first romping in her stomach, which has now reached a height of almost 30 centimeters. This is also the time when the baby reacts to noises with movements and kicks that are well perceived by the mother. The fact is that, for example, loud, disharmonic pop, rock and new jazz music, etc., that is to say, more spectacle than something harmonious, causes the child in the womb to move and kick much more strongly than quiet classical or other harmonious sounds. It seems as if the unborn child wants to defend itself against the disharmony it is hit by. It is also certain that the young fetus is already deeply accustomed to the mother's voice and that the child will recognize it after birth. If he or she is then breastfed, and this is also clearly established, it sucks much more strongly at the breast of the mother or at the bottle when it hears the motherly voice, when the mother speaks to the newborn. In the meantime, the fetus has become larger and stronger, which also increases its movements and kicks to such an extent that the mother even wakes up during sleep when she is kicked hard. Although the woman now has a ball belly, gentle sport or other gentle activity is important, both for the pregnant woman herself and for her adolescent child. Through appropriate exercise or work, which should not be strict, the mother keeps her muscles fit and stimulates blood circulation, which is also important for the baby. The last 2 months of pregnancy usually bring most women discomfort, mainly back pain, which can also be associated with breathing problems. The reason for this is the enormous weight the fetus gains. At this point, it still swims in the amniotic fluid, which has a temperature of 37 degrees. Now it also builds up a layer of fat to protect itself from the cold after birth. This in turn is the reason why it soon becomes too narrow for the child in the mother's abdomen, while its further growth shifts the mother's spine in such a manner that a kink develops. The woman's organs also shift. As the child now needs more and more space, the lungs are pushed upwards, making her breathing heavier and her heart much more powerful, which also shifts to an oblique position. For the highly pregnant woman, the smallest work and efforts now become a great burden. Thus comes the 40th week of pregnancy, and thus the highest time for the birth, to which the child must force itself past the pelvic bone of the mother. At the time of birth, the child usually has a length of 50 centimeters, while the head circumference is normally more than 30 centimeters. The child has to leave the mother's protective belly on the birth pathway. For the purpose of childbirth, the new human child to be born sends hormones to the mother, triggering her contractions. Normally, the birth of the child lasts up to 10 hours from the first birth symptoms at the mother's first delivery, but the whole process is very painful for the woman giving birth. In return, however, she is given a miracle, with a small human child of her own, with her own baby, which is carried within herself and has grown and developed in her body, a new human being on earth, a girl or a boy. Billy.
I find what you have written very good and informative when I consider the earthly conditions in relation to the general knowledge of the earth humans in this form, which is generally below the level of your article.
Thank you. Then do you think it can really be made into a brochure?
That is beyond a doubt.
Good. Then I have something else that we should look through together and for which assessment is needed. It concerns the photo book which Piero has in progress, and of which he has done a provisional printout for your inspection.
Then let us examine the work. I, however, think that we must not discuss my or your comments officially. Consequently, these should not appear in the conversation report.
That's clear. Let's now start the work.
Then make continuous notes after I have delivered a comment, if this should be necessary.
I will do that. Wait, I am just going to get a pen and paper. Okay, we can now begin.
Something is missing here, which I would like to state officially. The report from Freddie is missing in regard to his photographic recordings of the 10th and 25th of October, 1988. Equally, the same applies for Eva concerning the 19th August 1989 when she took a photo of one of our monitoring discs.
The beam ship of the Pleiaren Gaudon, half covered by the clouds at sunset. Date, 20th October, 1988, approx. 18 hours. Photo, Freddie Croft, the beam ship of the Pleiaren Gaudon before the full moon. Freddie did not notice the ship while photographing. Date, 25th October, 1988, approx. 23:14 Hz. Photo, Freddie Croft, the beam ship of the Pleiaren Gaudon before the full moon. Freddie did not notice the ship while photographing. Date, 25th of October, 1988, approx. 23:40 Hz. Photo, Freddie Croft, the beam ship of the Pleiaren Gaudon before the full moon. Freddie did not notice the ship while photographing. Date, 25th October 1988, approx. 23:40 hours. Photo, Freddie Croft.
What Freddie at that time photographed, was it one of your beam ships?
Indeed, it was one of our flying apparatuses as well as the monitoring disc.
And who at the time piloted the ship?
It was Gaudon who performed his monitoring task.
You mean on the 25th of October, 1988?
Yes. Equally, the same applies to the 10th of October, 1988, when Freddie took photos of the sunset.
And how did it come about that he let himself be captured on the film by Freddie?
It was as such intended and arranged for by Gaudon that only a wedge-shaped channel to the camera stayed open. Gaudon had my permission to do this.
That is indeed news. However, what does Gaudon actually mean?
The joyful rider. He was actually really glad about the fact that Freddie succeeded with the photographic recordings.
Freddie was of the opinion at the time, as I remember it, that the picture which he took on the 10th of October only was a light reflex in the lens.
This is not true because he actually photographed Gaudon's flying apparatus.
And how was it with Eva on the 19/8/1989?
28 centimeters high telemeter disc on the right of the open door. The wire on the floor and the gutter reflect the light of the telemeter disc. In the background, somewhat covered by the house roof, above the gutter, there is a second telemeter disc. From left to right, Yolanda Bolzern with Aruna Wechter, Freddie Croft center, bent over working. On the right with a camera in hand, Bernadette Brand. Date, 19th August 1989, 17:50 hours. Photo, Eva Bieri.
There were 4 monitoring discs in operation around the center at the time, remotely controlled from Gaudon's flying apparatus, which was responsible for this task.
And for which purpose was all of this? And why has he not come to visit me so far?
Gaudon was only on duty in the region of Earth up to the 16th of November 1989, and was given the order not to make any personal contact with you, but nevertheless, make his presence noticed precisely in this manner, through which the photographic recordings by Eva and Freddie has happened.
But for which purpose, then, if I may ask?
Indeed, because the why is not a secret. It should indicate to you and the member of the group that we are willing to let us become visible every now and then. Also to the members of the group for, on the one hand, to give them joy and, on the other hand, to indicate to them that we are still constantly present.
The thanks of all group members for that to you in return is a certainty. Let's, however, now continue with the photo book.
There is something else that I have to say officially. In my opinion, it might be appropriate that the testimonies that can be corroborated with pictures include the counterfeits of the authors of the pictures and of the witnesses concerned. Now, however, we should return to the photo book.
Clear, then, we would also have that. But now I have a question about the monitoring discs that circled around the center on the 19th of August, 1989. What was the reason for this, if one is allowed to know?
That is no secret either. In fact, everything that was happening around the center and in its buildings was recorded visually and acoustically by the devices.
Ah, why is that?
That is no secret either. What was held was used for demonstration and information purposes for all our Federation members.
I am flabbergasted. By all Federation members, do you really mean all humanities, or just spiritual leaders? The latter would not be logical, because you speak of all members of the Federation.
You already understand it correctly. The meaning of my words refers to all members of the Federation.
Then I am reassured when only 120,120,000 humans from foreign solar systems and planets know what is going on in the center, how the group members behave here, what they do and work, and what their interests are, etc. I am not sure what I mean. How many hours did the monitoring discs, or telemeter discs as we call them, register and record everything?
The whole process lasted from the evening of the 3rd of August, 1989, 18 hours to the 3rd of September, 1989. The last recordings were finished at midnight of that day.
And none of us heard, saw, or otherwise noticed anything about it until Ava caught our attention with her photo and made it clear to us that you were present. At least we suspected that you had the telemetric discs buzzing around, 2 of which Eva was able to photograph.
Now you have certainty. But now, my friend, I must also go back to my work if you do not have another question.
But I did. Yes. Again and again the Earth humans talk about the fact that certain animals are intelligent, like dolphins, monkeys, and elephants, and so forth. However, as the teaching of the Spirit, aka creation energy teaching, says, only human life forms of all kinds have a conscious intelligence that is also capable of conscious evolution. In contrast, animals have only one instinct. Accordingly, I define animal learning as instinct learning and human learning as intellect learning, which can also be called intellect learning and rationality learning, in which the awareness of the self is of crucial importance. If life forms appear that are similar to animals or plants, and that have an awareness of the self and thus also a conscious intellect and a conscious rationality as well as a conscious evolution, then they are undoubtedly of human nature, even if their appearance, body and organs, etc., are not human in earthly human form. And now the question, since you have far higher, more far-reaching and more profound knowledge and experience than all earthly scientists put together with regard to all sciences, and thus also in these things, how do you list the facts in these matters?
You have already explained what can be said about this in brief form.
Then one last question. Nihilophobia, does that mean fear of nothingness?
I am aware of nothing else.
I'm sorry, but there is one more question that comes to mind, and that is the 14-question answer. You have studied or read everything, but has the question now become loud, what should we do with this material?
Obviously, you forgot my suggestion in this regard, which was aimed at making sure that you revise everything well and put it into a correct writing form, in order to then make a brochure out of it, which should show interested people which facts are important with regard to the motives and the success of the core group members.
Ah, now I remember. Of course, I will pick that up at the next General Assembly.
Then I would like to say goodbye now. Be safe and goodbye, my friend.
Sahlomi Ptah. I also wish you all the best, and goodbye.